Thank you for joining me to talk through the latest research from the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women, entitled Women Entrepreneurs Surviving the Pandemic and Beyond, with findings from our 2020 and second annual audit of the experiences of women entrepreneurs in low and middle income countries. So briefly, just a little bit of information about the foundation. So since 2008, the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women has worked with over 175,000 women entrepreneurs across more than 100 low and middle income countries. And we do this by providing essential entrepreneurial skills, training and knowledge to women in a number of different ways with some fantastic donors and truly wonderful in-country partners. So from our award-winning business app, Her Venture, to our world-leading Mentoring Women in Business programme, and some fantastically successful in-country programs, we're really proud of the support that we're able to offer women entrepreneurs. And increasingly, we're also using our profile and track record to carry out advocacy work with and on behalf of the women entrepreneurs we work with. My name's Sian Hawkins, and I'm the Director of External Affairs at the Foundation, and I'm the lead author of this research report. Over the last decade, as the world's woken up to the potential of women to be engines of economic growth, levers to social change and conduits to the advancement of a wide range of development objectives, there's been significant global interest in women's economic empowerment. And with trillions of dollars missing from global GDP due to the entrepreneurship gender gap, substantial attention has been paid more recently to the power of women entrepreneurs in low and middle income countries to lift entire communities into more prosperous economic positions. Women's economic empowerment is also recognised as a key driver for development efforts more generally, as women often reinvest in education, nutrition and children's health. So, as all over the world we grapple with the outcomes of the COVID-19 pandemic and resulting economic fallout, there could be no better time to centre our thinking on women entrepreneurs and put women front and centre of economic policy and plans to build back better. But deeply entrenched challenges within the entrepreneurial ecosystem continue to stymie women entrepreneurs' ability to achieve their full potential. And despite some positive policy and legislative changes in parts of the world and programmatic interventions designed to support women entrepreneurs, without considered action now to address the socio-cultural barriers that still exist, progress towards fully empowering women entrepreneurs remains too slow. The women who take part in the Foundation's mentoring and entrepreneurial skills development programs continuously report to us that they gain a huge amount through their business skills training and mentoring programs. However, despite their new skills, their knowledge, their journeys to becoming successful entrepreneurs is still hampered by systemic, cultural, economic, social, and sometimes legal challenges that impinge on their ability and confidence to set up and run successful and more resilient businesses. So in order to support and work with women entrepreneurs in low and middle income countries, it's vital that we understand better their reality, the challenges they face, their motivations, the barriers they have to overcome, and how systemic these issues are. This research, building on two earlier reports published by the Foundation in 2020, is based on feedback from 125 women entrepreneurs in 32 countries. And the report aims to provide a comprehensive overview of some of the key challenges faced by women entrepreneurs in 2020 and identify their needs and their own recommendations for change. So let's make a start with the current health crisis and its impact on women entrepreneurs. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic hit the world in the early months of 2020, economic participation and opportunity for women had already been diminishing globally. According to the World Economic Forum, this is for a few primary reasons. Women have greater representation in roles that are being automated. Not enough women are entering professions where wage growth is the most pronounced, so most obviously, but not exclusively, technology, and insufficient care infrastructure and access to capital. Women-owned businesses are more vulnerable to economic disruption at a local, national and global level. Their businesses largely have thinner capital buffers than male-owned businesses, are operating in lower margin, service-based industries that are more vulnerable to economic shocks. We know that women are also overrepresented in the sectors hardest hit by COVID-19 lockdown restrictions, such as tourism, retail, fashion and hospitality. Furthermore, they may be less likely to access fiscal support packages designed to support sole traders or entrepreneurs, and this is due to a historic lack of gender disaggregated data in policymaking. Compounding all of this is the existing unpaid care burden. Around the world, women were already performing 3/4 of unpaid care work prior to COVID-19, and the CDC projections suggest this has already risen by 1 to 2 hours a day. Even though at the time of writing and me recording this, we're still dealing with and reporting on the initial impacts of the pandemic, nearly 1 in 10 women responding to our research reported that the impact of COVID-19 was the single greatest challenge that they'd ever faced. And this is really significant considering women entrepreneurs in low and middle income countries are often already running their businesses in really challenging circumstances where war, conflict, climate change, political instability, or poor infrastructure can be really major existing obstacles. Yet over and above these pre-existing challenges, as we dive deeper into the results from our research, we can see clearly the significant impact that the global pandemic has already had, and how the stakes for the women we work with, themselves, their families, their workforces, and their wider communities are just so incredibly high. Our research found that 21% of respondents highlighted that they no longer own or run their businesses. The impact of COVID-19 is sobering here. 66% of those women reported closing their businesses temporarily due to the negative impact of COVID. And sadly, 11% of women reported that they had to close their businesses permanently. For women entrepreneurs who continue to run their businesses, the pandemic has created a really difficult environment to operate in. Similar to our earlier research, this study again found a significant majority, around 84%, of women entrepreneurs reporting that the pandemic has had a negative impact on their business operations. Only 7 women entrepreneurs reported that the pandemic has not had a negative impact on their business operations. We asked women if they thought their businesses might have to close as a result of the pandemic, and nearly 4 in 10 women responded that their business may have to close as a result of the pandemic. We asked women entrepreneurs what the most significant challenges the COVID pandemic would pose to their business operations. Access to markets and customers is a huge challenge, as women's access to their customers and markets has been significantly disrupted through various regional, national and international lockdowns and travel restrictions. And this research yields that for 60% of respondents, the pandemic has undermined their access to customers and markets or stopped their access completely. 53% of respondents also reported that production and services were reduced due to the pandemic, and a further 31% also reported having supply chain issues. When we asked women earlier in the pandemic, last April, about their business operations being impacted by COVID, we saw much lower percentages of women reporting challenges in these areas, indicating a worsening situation here. As a result of the economic crisis created by the pandemic, the ILO has estimated that nearly half of the global workforce is at risk of livelihood loss due to the pandemic. And our research reveals that many women entrepreneurs have had to make really difficult decisions regarding their staff members. Over a third of women entrepreneurs reported that the pandemic has impacted their staff and workforce through either redundancies, forced pay cuts, or reduced hours. And many women entrepreneurs were also worried about the impact of potential business closures on their wider networks and communities. Nearly half of women said that their staff would suffer due to their business closing. Over a quarter of respondents felt that their customers would suffer, and a large proportion of respondents, over 30%, expressed that their community would lose an important service if their business closed down. Perhaps unsurprisingly, 78% of the women responding reported that COVID-19 had had an impact on the roles and responsibilities in their households. Of the women who reported a change in their household roles and responsibilities, 40% stated that they carry out more of the domestic responsibilities, while 36% reported that responsibilities had been equally distributed between them and any adult male members of their household. This is significant because this additional household level burden creates an even more acute double bind for women who may be experiencing greater than ever time poverty, coupled with greater than ever financial need to run their businesses. Of the women who reported that their businesses will or may have to close due to the pandemic, nearly half told us that they would struggle to support themselves if their business closed. And 44% of women told us that they would struggle to support their families. This statistic is particularly harrowing, given that we know many of the women participating in this research live in countries and economies where there's little social protection available. Social protection such as unemployment benefits, maternity pay and pensions provides an essential safety net in times of crisis. But there is still a pervasive gender gap in social protection, which is closely interrelated to gender equality in the labour market. I'll come on to talk about access to finance in much more detail later on, but I just want to briefly say now that nearly half of the women we surveyed have lost out on formal financial investment opportunities due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is extremely concerning. Not only is the challenge of accessing finance still extremely prevalent, but it's likely this has intensified through the pandemic despite a growing need for women's enterprises to survive this crisis. Over a third of these women reported that they would struggle to afford basic necessities like food. Potential business closures would also have an impact on women's ability to make loan repayments and avoid debt. And 28% of respondents reported they'll struggle to pay back loans, and a further 28% told us that they would get into debt as a result of the pandemic. Furthermore, 18% of respondents also felt that they would be extremely unlikely to become a business owner again if their business ceased due to the pandemic. The tragic consequences of women's businesses closing extend much further than their own personal loss. We've also lost the potential that these women had to redefine the future for themselves, their families and their communities, to design and create innovative businesses with the power to transform the world. In our survey, we also asked women about the types of support that would help them to get through the current crisis and keep their businesses alive. Perhaps unsurprisingly, financial support is the most popular response, with just under 3/4 of women suggesting that this would help them to overcome the challenges caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Across the world, economic recovery packages are being designed and delivered, but without a specific focus on the needs of women, gender-neutral or gender-blind products, services, packages are often more relevant for and geared towards male-run businesses as a default. This unintentionally disadvantages women who may be less able to access the support as it will not meet their needs, or they'll simply be unaware of its existence. Over half of respondents also suggested that training and capacity building would provide them with vital support, with several women specifically commenting that information in relation to exporting to new markets and digitalisation would be useful. Over half of women responding to our survey highlighted how important a peer support network would be for them to be able to survive the pandemic. And a further 45% wanted more mentoring and coaching support, and several women commented that having access to experts to support their business would be useful. 14% of respondents highlighted the need for better support to manage childcare and other domestic responsibilities, freeing them up to be able to spend time on their business. We also asked women how national governments and local authorities might be able to provide them with the support they need through the pandemic. Many women highlighted the need for financial support and a more business-friendly environment, as 25% of respondents recommended that governments and more local authorities should provide women entrepreneurs with grants or loans. In order to understand more about the push and pull factors that drive women entrepreneurs, we asked our respondents about their key motivations. This research shows that the key motivators for many women entrepreneurs to drive their businesses were rooted in their desires to make a difference in their communities. And this is consistent with all previous research we've conducted with women entrepreneurs. Over 40% of respondents selected making a difference as one of their top 3 reasons to be an entrepreneur. A significant proportion of women also reported that they were motivated to become entrepreneurs to create jobs for others. A true entrepreneurial spirit was also reflected in the responses, with over 1 in 5 women stating that the key motivation for them to start their business was to fill a gap in the market. Our survey findings also reveal that many women entrepreneurs are motivated by lifestyle factors such as running a business for their own personal fulfillment or happiness, to have a better work-life family balance, or to leave a legacy for their children. We know that entrepreneurial activities undertaken by women are often born out of a desire to improve their family's financial situations. A quarter of respondents reported a key motivation for them was the need to improve the lives of themselves and their families, with 23% saying that they wanted to have more control over their finances, and just over 1 in 10 women being motivated by a desire to be their own boss. These motivational factors are linked closely to development indicators for women's economic empowerment. They're also essential components for women having more agency and more decision-making capacity over their money and assets and taking on more visible leadership roles in their communities. As well as asking about women's motivations, we also wanted to hear about their challenges. As with our 2019 annual audit report, a lack of access to finance was the key challenge for women entrepreneurs in 2020. Over a third of women entrepreneurs reported that this was their main challenge. Other practical challenges that women reported facing, albeit in much smaller numbers, were around recruiting quality staff, lack of access to markets, issues finding and retaining customers, and a lack of access to business networks. Women reported further significant challenges that stem more directly from the ecosystems that they're operating in. Over 1 in 10 women reported that their biggest challenge was around local or national economic conditions, such as a recession. So I promised I'd come back to the topic of access to finance in more detail, so here we are. And access to finance, as I mentioned earlier, was identified as the most significant obstacle for women entrepreneurs in our 2019 annual audit report and again this year. And this echoes numerous other research findings and is widely understood and considered to be a major obstacle for women entrepreneurs. Women entrepreneurs' access to investments and credits and their decision around whether to access or apply for investment or loans can be impacted by a range of financial and non-financial variables. So non-financial variables can include local legislative and policy frameworks, education and financial literacy levels, cultural assumptions about businesswomen that limit outreach to potential women clients, and structural sexism that's built into financial systems leading to gender-biased credit scoring and gender stereotyping in investment and valuations. The financial variables can include assets, collateral, interest rates, credit ratings, and risks associated with women operating in less profitable industries. There is a well-known gender gap in financial inclusion, and this is keenly felt in low and middle-income countries and underpins many of the root causes of the challenges women entrepreneurs face in accessing finance. Across the world, women are less likely to have a bank account than men or access to any kind of formal financial institution. A large proportion of women entrepreneurs responding this survey, so 78%, had investment in their businesses. And whilst this figure seems relatively high, it's important to note that for 2/3 of these women, that investment was from their personal savings. Many women, 44%, who had secured investment had received it from friends or family. And these informal investment routes were by far the most common ways for women to have had investment in their companies. Small numbers of women had received investment from banks or other financial services, so 15% respondents had been able to secure an investment or loan from a bank, and 6% had been able to access a business loan from a financial services company. Very few women had accessed a credit card, so 4%, or received investment for an angel investor or a PE firm, around 3%. And I'm really aware that the numbers we're reporting here could be higher than the norm due to about 2/3 of the women responding to this research having been supported by the foundation, so maybe in a better position to be able to access finance than is the norm across women's entrepreneurship. So what's holding women back from investment? And the answers here highlight that women entrepreneurs are being held back from applying for or receiving investment for a broad range of these financial or non-financial reasons. Some connected to the suitability of available products and services, and others linked to perceived risks associated with taking on investments and loans. So 46% of women shared that the interest rates of investment products are just too high to be a viable option for them. Similarly, over a third of women felt too worried to take on an investment due to concerns about how they'd pay it back. And another third of respondents felt that investment repayment terms and rates were just not right for them. 1 in 5 women also expressed that complicated application processes are a barrier to them applying, and a number of women felt that they just didn't meet the eligibility criteria, with around 12% of women entrepreneurs feeling that investment options were simply more targeted to men. We asked women what would make accessing finance easier or more appealing for them, and over half, 59% of respondents said that flexible repayment terms would make them more likely to apply for investment. 59% of women also expressed that business mentoring would make them feel more confident in applying for finance. And nearly half of respondents felt that having access to support from other women entrepreneurs, so networks of support, would help them to feel ready to access finance. With 47% of respondents also feeling that having access to investors that specifically prioritise investment in women entrepreneurs would boost their confidence in applying for funding. Respondents also wanted to have personal introductions to investors and see more women on the boards of investment companies. Our survey sought to establish whether women have equal access to formal investment in their enterprises compared to male entrepreneurs operating within their ecosystems. And nearly half of respondents felt that women have less access to formal investment opportunities. Of course, many banks, investors, financial services providers are creating gender-neutral investment products for businesses. But these gender-neutral products that default to a traditional idea about entrepreneurship are actually much more likely to be suitable for male audiences. And this perpetuates the cycle of women lacking investment opportunities that are suitable for them. Therefore, fewer women are applying for investment. And this results in a common misconception that fewer women want or need investment. So opportunities for investment are still being targeted towards men. And there is no challenge to the current status quo. The experience and impact of gender stereotypes came out strongly in the Foundation's inaugural annual audit research conducted in 2019 as a major barrier to business success. So in our 2020 research, we wanted to dig deeper into women's experiences of gender stereotypes. So on screen now is quite a busy chart, but I will aim to talk you through the most pertinent elements of it. Women entrepreneurs responding to our research had most commonly experienced negative gender stereotypes from friends and family. And these stereotypes were mostly those associated with women having traditional roles. So really focusing on women's value as mothers or caregivers. Over half of respondents had been challenged by family members with the stereotype that men don't like women who are too strong, too business-minded, too successful. And 53% of respondents had experienced the stereotype that women should prioritise domestic duties such as caring for their children. And 50% that running a business is not compatible with motherhood. So sadly, for many women entrepreneurs, the very people who are closest to them are those people who are creating these artificial barriers to their success and tempering their aspirations. Many women also reported being challenged with gender stereotypes by co-workers or business acquaintances. And these were usually stereotypes linked to a perceived lack of usually stereotypically male characteristics and attributes that we've come to associate with business and entrepreneurial success. So over 4 in 10 women responding had experienced negative gender stereotypes from business associates or co-workers around women not being assertive enough to be successful entrepreneurs, and that women are too risk averse. 41% of respondents had experienced the stereotype that women are not good entrepreneurs, and 38% had been told that women are not business-minded. Our research also shows that the media fuels many of the gender stereotypes that women entrepreneurs are facing. Stereotypes and attitudes about women are often reinforced and perpetuated through advertising. So research, for example, by the UN Stereotype Alliance and Kantar found that across 56 countries, only 7% of women and 9% of men in advertising are being depicted in non-traditional roles. And alarmingly, they found that progressive depictions of women have actually slowed down during the COVID-19 pandemic. The most commonly reported gender stereotype related to women entrepreneurs being perpetuated through the media was that men are more ambitious than women, so their businesses are more successful. A third of women reported that the media expressed stereotypes that women should prioritise domestic duties, such as caring for children. And crucially, for entrepreneurship audiences, there were also a large number of reports of women experiencing negative gender stereotypes from potential investors, such as in this quote from one of our respondents based in India. The most commonly experienced gender stereotype from investors was that women are not innovative, and 35% of respondents had experienced that. And a further 28% had experienced the stereotype that women are just not good entrepreneurs or women are too risk averse. And I'm really conscious here that our figures may also be wildly underreporting the issues, given that only a very small percentage of our research sample were able to access investment from formal sources at all. So they may just not have been in touch with investors in any way, shape or form. So moving on to women entrepreneurs' legal rights. A conducive legal environment is critical to the birth and growth of women-owned businesses. And despite global efforts to promote women's economic empowerment, the World Bank has found that in a staggering 115 economies across the world, women do not have equal access to the types of financial services, so loans, credit cards, bank accounts, that will enable them to become entrepreneurs. And currently, at least 155 countries have one law, at least, that limits women's economic opportunities. In our research sample, 15% of women stated that they were aware of laws, policies, or regulations that negatively impact women entrepreneurs, and 2/3 said that they were not aware of any such laws. But in reality, huge swathes of the population across the world are living in countries where there are discriminatory laws and policies in place that impinge on women's entrepreneurs' success. Yet, they've not been made aware of these laws or their impacts. We also asked women if they were aware of their rights and protections in relation to being a women business owner. Only just over half of respondents stated that they were aware of their legal rights, and over a quarter responded that they were not aware. But respondents were almost universally interested in learning more about their rights, with over 90% stating that they want to know more. In 2021, the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women is piloting a new influencing capacity building training program for women entrepreneurs in a number of countries. And an integral part of this new program is equipping women with knowledge and understanding of what their rights and protections as business owners are, and how to challenge some of these systemic and structural barriers that they're facing. 2021 is going to be a pivotal year for women entrepreneurs around the world, particularly those in low and middle income countries. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic began, women's economic participation was already inequitable compared to men's, and the gender gap was growing. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated this gender gap, and it's likely to continue to grow into the near future. There can be no doubt that investment in women entrepreneurs makes financial sense, with women-owned businesses providing a lifeline to economies around the world. Women's untapped contribution to the economy could help provide the global economy with the uplift that is needed. Our own research with the Boston Consulting Group in 2019 showed that we could add up to $5 trillion to the global economy if we close this gender gap in entrepreneurship. So the economic rationale to support women entrepreneurs to thrive is abundantly clear, and it's critically important to recognise the positive role that women's economic empowerment has on communities, families, and economies at large. Yet, still, first and foremost, empowering women economically is a critical human rights issue and a matter of gender justice. So beyond the clear economic motivation for unlocking the potential of women entrepreneurs, there must be continued prioritisation of the overarching human rights framework women's economic empowerment sits within, and the intersection with other women's rights issues such as gender-based violence, maternal health, and equal pay. In the report, we make a series of recommendations for a range of audiences who are crucial to this. But our overarching recommendations for all readers and watchers are, firstly, to ensure that women entrepreneurs are able to survive and thrive through the COVID-19 pandemic, through the creation of fiscal support packages designed to support women-owned micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, putting women entrepreneurs front and centre of economic policy and ensuring equal access to finance. We want you to support the urgent review and repealing of policy and legislation that is discriminating against women entrepreneurs or inhibiting their business success. And we want you to support the collection, analysis and dissemination of gender disaggregated data on micro, small and medium-sized enterprises to ensure that legislation, policy, fiscal support packages and financial products and services take into account the needs of women entrepreneurs. Thank you for watching. We'd love to hear from you. Please use the contact details on the screen to get in touch.